Thank you for listening to The Lawyer's Daughter. This is Jen Carroll, and this podcast does not have any video. I know I'm on YouTube, but that doesn't matter. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hey everybody, it's day 55, September 12th, and I am here coming at you live from the Jennifer Carroll broadcast studio in my messy office. I am here to talk to you about restoring truth to political discourse. And the reason this is important to me is when I was doing my master's work at Sacramento State, it was a fantastic program. I don't know how I found it or how it happened, but the people working there were practitioners. And typically, you don't get a lot of that in college where you're with people who are doing the actual jobs. But at Sac State, it was kind of amazing because we were in the capital city of California, and these professors in the Comm Studies department had access. They were into politics, they were into all kinds of things. And one of my professors was really into media, Dave Martin, who I think is a conservative actually, but he was very much into media. He might not be a hardcore conservative though, as I think about it. He might be like a moderate. Anywho, I never came really through in the class. I've learned that more because I've been friends with my professors from my master's program because it was so good. But anywho, in fact, one of my teachers went on to serve on the board of directors for AARP. Like, that's a national figure. Barbara O'Connor, killer. She was just amazing. My other one, Marlene von Friedrichs Fitzwater. Yeah, that was her name. She started a whole hospice care special health place for people who have illnesses that are generally gonna be degenerative. So these are amazing people that I learned from. And one of the classes on media, and it was I'm going to go with like probably 1985 maybe, because I got my undergrad done by 1984. So I would have been in the master's program in 85, 86. So it's important. The timing is important because this is about when media was going to change significantly. And I remember Dave Martin coming in and saying, there's something new that's going to happen. It's called reality TV, and it's going to change everything. And when he played out what was coming, I got really nervous. At that time, also, so you should know this, it's a funny story. At that time, Rush Limbaugh was just getting his start in Sacramento. He was, I forget the station that he was on, but it was a Cap City station, I believe, but it still wasn't a big deal. He was not the Rush Limbaugh y'all know. Back then in Sacramento, my Sacramento people can vouch for this. He did not come out of the gate as an ass. I mean, he was an ass, but he was different kind of ass, like a Howard Stern kind of ass. He was like, yeah, he was big and bold, and he would say ridiculous things and be provocative as an entertainer would need to be. But he was not trying to destroy America. He was not a psychotic conservative and all those things. And he bought me dinner. So there you go. Because you're just gonna laugh because it's such a Jennifer Carroll story. Because I took him on the radio. I took him on. He was saying really sexist, dumb things in a row. So I called and we got in discussion, and he said, I'm going to buy you dinner tonight. Let's go talk about it. And so I went, and a bunch of people went. It was a lot of people, but I was his guest, and it was crazy. And that was probably right at the pivot where he was starting to become feminazi. You know how he is? That guy. He was just finding his power. And I suspect he probably was talking to people who were figuring out that he could be a big voice for them. Because he left Sacramento not long after that. I did too. I went down to San Francisco. But he was also coming of age. So when Dave Martin was telling me about what was going to happen, telling all of us students about what was going to happen in reality television, and then you see as Rush Limbaugh's evolving, you start to understand what's coming. So that's my forward to this and why I give a crap. Because at the time when I was in class, at that moment in time, the Fairness Doctrine still existed. And the Fairness Doctrine was a brave experiment. And this is partly one of the reasons I love living in a democracy, because we don't necessarily know always the right thing to do, but we can try things. We can test things. We can test our hypotheses. And so one of the things that happened was the Fairness Doctrine. And let me start with telling you about that, because this is all about restoring truth to political discourse, right? That's only going to happen when the humans involved choose to make that choice. But there are some things we can do as an electorate to demand that our political discourse at least return to some kind of normal. So here's what we've got. In 1949, So right before the 50s started, the Federal Communications Commission, one of the agencies I'll talk about this weekend, established the Fairness Doctrine to ensure balanced and honest coverage of controversial public issues on broadcast media. The idea was broadcasters needed to present contrasting viewpoints on issues of public importance, theoretically fostering an informed public through access to multiple sides of a debate. Oh my God, yes. Dear kids sitting around the recording, please gather around. There was a time when we actually pursued knowing all sides to a story. That used to be that was like an American norm. It was an ideal. It was like, I want to say it's an ideal more than a norm. Americans took pride in understanding the news. We had one of the best for the States. We had respected news readers, commentators, but they were news people, journalists who would sit there. And so it was an American ideal and an American value that you would understand a story more than just the headline. Okay, this was the attempt to have a good intention of promoting fairness, but the doctrine has controversy and challenges, as you might imagine, and it led to its dissolution in the late 1980s. So here's the deal. The post-World War II era saw the rapid growth of the reach and influence of radio and television. Remember, that's when those old movies come in, and from the new movies are from the war. That's my bad sound effect for old movie video. Oh my God, the world has changed so much. Old movies that I didn't even get to see. That used to be what they go to on Saturdays. They'd go watch the news at the theater. So we're seeing that media was starting to become active, and the public was consuming news and information suddenly in different ways: radio, television, even at the movies. The FCC introduced the Fairness Doctrine because it recognized broadcasters' influential role in shaping public opinion. And the goal was really simple. It was to ensure that the airwaves, and these were considered public property, the public airwaves, those are the radio frequency broadcast channels out there that allow the radio and the broadcast to move from one point to another. Those are public property. It served a public interest by offering a platform for diverse perspectives. And broadcasters were required to devote a portion of airtime. So they got the license. They could win the license and make money with the license, but they had to also serve the public good. And they had to use part of their airtime to cover controversial issues and to provide opposing viewpoints when presenting one side of a debate. This is where a lot of shows like 60 Minutes, it has a really long tail. Some of these shows came for exactly this reason. It was the broadcast network's effort to do deep dives on things so people could understand the news. Man, guys, it was a long time ago. So it worked like this. It was a regulatory check on the broadcaster's content. For example, if a station aired a program on a hot button issue like the Vietnam War, it was required to provide time for opposing views, whether through interviews, segments, or commentary. The doctor aimed to keep the public informed by preventing broadcasters from monopolizing the narrative. You understand that, right? You had to win a license to broadcast that gave you access to a broadcast channel. That channel was assigned to you. You could make money off of it. So it's a very, very lucrative license that you got. But in exchange for that lucrative license, you did need to not monopolize the narrative. The policy seemed beneficial and encouraged open discourse and holding media outlets accountable for biased reporting. However, the broadcasters, this is going to come. The broadcasters soon found a way to exploit loopholes. One of the most memorable examples was the broadcasters navigating around the Fairness Doctrine relating to coverage of the Vietnam War. Many TV and radio stations were reluctant to air controversial debates about the war, fearing the world would have to provide airtime for opposing viewpoints. So right there, they didn't want to take on the controversy because they had a point of view, and the concern was if they showed the other point of view, it would be an opposing viewpoint and could create backlash from their audience. So I'm hoping you start to understand that they have to maintain their audience to make money. So if they broadcast stuff that's going to piss off their audience, they're going to lose their audience and not make money. Oh my God, money's entered the chat, right? So now money is what's really behind the use of that broadcast. The license to use a public airwave is being licensed to you to make money, but you can't make money if you say things your audience doesn't like. Understand that bind. Rather than engage in a balanced discussion, stations started avoiding covering issues in depth which would cause critical judgment of the viewers. So now we just won't cover controversial topics, which is possibly, because what's going to happen at the same time, guys, at the same time, broadcasters are starting to avoid publishing things that could cause controversy in which they'd have to report both sides or all sides, comes reality TV. Here it comes. And Dave Martin told us it was coming. And when I knew it was coming, I battened down the hatches, but I didn't even know how big it was going to be. The rise of cable. Two media systems emerge. Many people don't realize at the same time how significantly cable television was going to change the landscape. I did, because I was sitting in my media class. I happened to be drinking from the font of one of the men who was actually paying attention to this whole thing. In the 1980s, the media environment evolved from one dominated by broadcast networks, the public airwaves, to one increasingly shaped by cable. Those are pipes. All right, that's cable, that's wires, that's not public airwaves. It's a different beast. Cable television wasn't subjected to the same public interest regulations because it operated outside the bounds of the fairness doctrine. Can you see the Murdochs salivating now? Can you imagine? The doctrine was only applied to broadcast, where those public licenses were applied. There was a responsibility to protect and honor the public licenses, right? You get that. But suddenly we have cable, and that could go unchallenged. The public broadcast media outlets for things like CBS, NBC, ABC, PBS, public broadcast. In Los Angeles, we had Channel 5, KTVU. No, that's Channel 5. That's Channel 2. Did I forget? KTLA. That was it. KTLA. That's about all we got in Ventura of an external station. That 11 and 13. I don't know what KCOP, KTLA. Yeah, those were that. But we did not have a lot of channels growing up. Just didn't have, especially in Ventura. Ventura didn't have cable forever. If you're out in the sticks, it took a long time to get cable. And frankly, the sticks is anybody with a smaller population, right? So cable, by contrast to broadcast, was considered private media and thus had far more freedom in choosing what content to air. It didn't have to provide a balanced perspective. Networks like CNN launched in 1980 and then later Fox News and MSNBC free to adopt editorial slants and focus on their target audiences. This was a big deal. Sorry, I didn't mean to split that, but focused on their target audiences contributed to the new rise of partisan news. Because now the model's clear, right? If you like what I say, you're going to watch my channel. I'm going to make money. I get to serve you my ads. And you're all happy because I'm saying things you like to hear. That's that's just how it works now. I say what you like to hear. That works on the same way on social media everywhere. If you're saying the things I want to hear, that's what I listen to. Cable's rise created this platform for more opinion-driven programming, and media outlets no longer had to offer opposing views. And the shift The shift profoundly impacted how news was consumed and contributed to the increasing polarization seen in today's media. So it ended in the 1980s. The Fairness Doctrine ended as conservative talk show hosts, particularly Rush Limbaugh, became prominent voices after the Fairness Doctrine's repeal. But before its end, similar hosts faced some scrutiny. So the broadcasters started arguing that requiring the Fairness Doctrine infringed on their First Amendment rights, right? They were trying to say this was a free speech issue because the FCC was trying to control speech around controversial issues. And you still had to even decide what a controversial issue was. So this was kind of complicated and ambiguous. So what happened is that partisan media then exploded over on cable while broadcast tried to remain sane, and it ended up that they just needed to get rid of the Fairness Doctrine. So this happened to also work perfectly during the Reagan administration, because now we know, all the way back then, the Heritage Foundation was already moving to try to get us where regulations would be fewer and that the free market could decide, don't you know? The free market and the Fairness Doctrine don't align because the fairness doesn't drive profits in the media industry. Media outlets rely on capturing and maintaining audience attention to generate that ad revenue. So controversial or one-sided content, which caters to the audience needs and ignites emotional responses is much more profitable than providing balanced, nuanced discussions that might alienate parts of the audience. Corporate media ownership further exacerbates the issue as large conglomerates prioritize profits and shareholder value over public interest. So, it's like everything else in America that things have been gobbled up, right? Small independent. I lament that KGO 810 in San Francisco is no longer around. It was a privately held media company, and it was amazing. I don't know that I've ever seen a radio station that served its market and its community so effectively. It got us through the Loma Prieta earthquake and told us where to be and how to get out of our homes and how to get around the bridge that had collapsed and the marina that was on fire and the cypress structure that had pancaked. I didn't turn off KGO radio for days. That's how well that radio station served the public. And that is on a public airway. And that was like the best service of the community I've ever seen by media ever anywhere. I mean, we've had great examples, but it just was so personal, so relevant, so immediate. You could find out how people you cared about were doing on different parts of the city after that earthquake, because I was at the game. I had to get home from the game. The Candlestick is on the southern part of San Francisco, and I happen to live in Noe Valley, which is still the southern part of San Francisco. It's up and over by the Castro, but just that means the drive from the Candlestick to my house in Noe was about, on a good day, 12 minutes. It took us 3 hours to get home from Candlestick to Noe Valley. That's how much traffic and confusion and desperation there was. And then when I got home, oh my God, I've never seen such damage from an earthquake. My house, my cats survived, thank God, but everything else got shaken out of cupboards. There was glass. You've heard those stories about inches of glass. There was inches of glass in my kitchen because my house happened to orient east to west, and that's how it shook. And everything came flying out. My computer fell across the room. It was amazing. And the cat, where the closet was, where the kitty litter was, everything fell down. Well, I'm so lucky a kitty was not in the closet using the kitty litter at that time. It just went east to west, back and forth, and everything shook out of my cupboards and closets like I can't believe. All right. So let me go back. Sorry, got a little distracted there, but that's how much I loved KGO 810. I think anybody from the Bay Area that hears this is going to agree with me. It was a fabulous, fabulous place. So this mess of corporate media ownership, everybody bitching and complaining, everybody wanted to make money, nobody cared anymore about showing all sides of ideas. This hot mess hits in 1987, and it's the FCC under the Reagan administration, and they officially revoke the policy because why are we regulating anyway? Let's just stop. And it got killed. So the question is, of course, is it time to bring back a new fairness doctrine? In today's media ecosystem dominated by 24-hour news cycles, I don't think that's going to work. On one hand, reinstating the policy could impose a new level of accountability, compelling them to balance and outright counterweigh partisan narratives. But as we know, by offering competing perspectives, they might reduce the spread of unchecked disinformation, but they're going to piss off their audience. On the other hand, the modern media landscape has it's far more complex than 1949, and it seems to get more complicated every day with the proliferation of digital platforms, social media, independent outlets. It's transformed the media into a chaotic mix of corporate ownership, media consolidation, independence, like journalists who are just going on their own and asking you to subscribe to their Substack. I mean, it's really become fractured. And newsrooms have shrunk with fewer reporters to investigate stories thoroughly. And you can tell by the reporting because the reporting is not deep. That's why I'm doing these podcasts, because these reports are not deep. You've got to spend some time and go into these issues. This is work when I'm trying to figure out sources and what's really going on. This is hard. And I'm doing it for free because I'm an idiot. So this is what I'm saying. As a result of alternative facts and conspiracy theories and entertainment more than factual reporting and blurring the line between opinion and journalism and algorithm-driven platforms and sensationalized content for engagement and not accuracy, this is the hot mess that is today's media. In this environment, it's unclear if the fairness doctrine could even make a difference. So what does this mean for our political process? It means we need to think of some other ways to go about this. We need to reintroduce civility and reason to political discourse. And we should consider ways for broadcasters to present more comprehensive array of viewpoints. This could be really impactful in reducing polarization, as audiences would be exposed to opposing opinions in a more structured format. It would also discourage, in theory, the dissemination of disinformation. But how would you enforce it? This is the whole. We have Elon Musk one day posting propaganda will not be tolerated on this platform, and the next day talking about Haitian immigrants eating Canadian geese. I can't. Like, there's no there. I don't know where the truth is anymore. It's us. We are the truth. You have to also look at how this is going to affect, how would it interplay and affect social media? Because you have platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube that have completely transformed how people consume news. In fact, on Facebook, they won't let you post anything about the election. I'm our advertiser, anything about the election. They've gone so far as to become an entity within a government that requires people to vote for and to participate in elections, and they're ignoring it. They don't want any part of it. In fact, I don't think anybody even sees my stuff on Facebook because I get no likes. I have one. Tracy is the only person that ever likes my stuff on Facebook. I love her. Thank you, Tracy, for listening every day. I used to babysit her. She's busted. I used to babysit her when she was a kid and I was a kid. Our dads were lawyers together. So when you talk about looking at social media, when you have spaces like Telegram and Truth Social and others, they have amplified the issues and they create echo chambers where users are exposed primarily to ideology-aligned content without fact-checking or opposing viewpoints. It's dangerous, guys. Despite widespread concerns about the false information and the increasing influence of these platforms, little serious effort has been made to impose regulations, even close to what the Fairness Doctrine did. This lack of oversight has allowed disinformation to flourish, and we know we just busted the Russians for getting in it, and their bots are crazy. I suspect those are a lot of the bots that are coming after me over on YouTube. One of the core challenges is that social media platforms, although appearing decentralized, are controlled by companies that own and manipulate the algorithms that govern the content delivery. And the algorithms are designed to prioritize engagement over balance or accuracy. In fact, the more emotionally charged, the more they click, right? Like, I still will always click on a cat video because I'm an idiot. The result is a system where platforms, not users, or independent oversight are involved. Nobody gets to decide on the content except for the company that's making it. And this profit-driven approach amplifies disinformation, extreme viewpoints, and conspiracy theories. It amplifies them, people. It makes them louder. It makes balanced, fact-based discourse even harder. It's why half of us are not talking to friends and relatives, because they're living in these silos of disinformation. And we're screwed because it's always going to come back to free speech. The problem is nobody's saying the speech is Looney Tunes and being able to cut through that noise. And it's a real problem when the TV stations, when Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, and those just keep making it worse. It's absolutely why Trump insisted it was dogs are being eaten, and he saw it on TV, because there he is. He's watching that garbage. This President Trump watches that garbage, ex-president. Okay, so is there a chance of something like this returning? Here's the kind of things that democracy is requiring us to do to establish and maintain political norms. That's an important thing. We've got to try to get it back. So there may be some ways to revive aspects of the Fairness Doctrine. Maybe there's advocates who have called for a version to be updated to apply to cable news and digital platforms. I think that's going to be a heavy lift, and I think monitoring that's going to be really tough. There's another idea to content label and fact check by platforms. It's interesting. Twitter was doing that, and then it still does it, but it doesn't matter, and nothing ever gets deleted from Twitter now. Nothing. You can say the most Laura Loomer thing in the world, and it'll actually like rage on Twitter. It'll do really well. So you need to know there's just not a lot to get behind content labeling and fact checking, because even when the facts are checked, it doesn't matter, because on the news channels, in the silos, the ideas are reinforced. There's really nothing encouraging people to fight the disinformation other than their peers across the table from them. And when you're trying to negotiate across the table, that's the hardest kind of negotiation. If you can get somebody to sit next to you and negotiate, you're doing so much better. You have so much of a better chance of coming out with a good outcome if you're sitting next to each other. But if you're across from each other, that is absolutely going to pit you two against each other. Just think of the dynamics. Just picture it in your head. There's also the idea of publicly funded fact-checking initiatives, Snopes, or as Trump said yesterday in his rally, Snoops, because, he's nothing if not delightful. The independent public fact-checking is great, but like PolitiFact, factcheck.org, Snopes, but people assume that they are Democrat-based because the facts we always check, it's the most hilarious response to Trump in the debate, is they fact-checked him so much, and I'm like, because he's full of crap. He's just full of crap. Kamala, a lot of the times, was just telling you her plans of what she wants to do. And I'm so down for that $50,000 for starting a business. I'm already trying to think of the business I'm going to start. I want that money to start a business. That is so exciting to me. So publicly funded fact-checking could work, but I suspect that a bunch of people will consider them not truthful. And then there's what we probably should be doing in school, which is media literacy education. And that's teaching everyone from a very young age. Maybe we're going to have to go back and get some of the old folks, teaching them how to identify disinformation, propaganda, bias, credible sources. I watched the best SVU rerun last night. I think it's from the first year of Trump's presidency. And they were talking about all the stuff going on with the police department. It's the episode where the police department arrests a black man who they really honestly had no business arresting whatsoever. But they arrest a black man in Central Park. It was based on that one where the guy was birding and that crazy lady called the police on the man who was birding. It was kind of that, how they riff off headlines. But later we see Benson being asked by the investigator why she arrested the black man and didn't even do a background check on the white woman that was complaining about him. And you see Olivia say, well, I'm not racist. And in that moment, you realize, yeah, you are. You absolutely positively are, because you arrested the black man. And in the scenario, he had been arrested by the beat cops, but it didn't matter because she didn't question it. And that's really the point. And the white woman, who had several citations for being a Karen, I forget what they were. She had whatever they made up. The point was they didn't run her background. They only ran the black man's background. And Olivia Benson was caught up in her own bias. You might not be prejudiced, but you may be biased. And that's the issue here in media literacy education. It's to start to make you understand that bias is a problem. And we all have it. You can't not have it. That's just like a human nature thing. So the trick is to be aware of it and to hold yourself responsible for it when it's in play. So awareness. So media literacy education makes a lot of sense to me. I think everybody should have it. I think it's like an American value, and we should be teaching our kids how to consume information and how to be critical thinkers. And all you teachers that are afraid of AI, get over yourselves, because it exists. It's going to be here, and you need to start teaching the kids how to use it. You just do, because I want them to be smart, and I want these kids to help save the earth. We're in trouble. And last, we could possibly look at a way to incentivize responsible reporting. Governments and private institutions could explore ways to do things that would fund public interest journalism and reduce the financial dependency on click-driven revenue models. That probably is one of the better things to do. I was thinking a lot last night about maybe if we had public television news, and it was run by a editorial board that was made up of people that are a cross-section of America. So yeah, I know it's one outlet. It probably wouldn't get a lot of people, although I would for sure watch it. Like for the debate the other night, I would watch that in a minute. I know it's C-SPAN, but it's not C-SPAN. I need C-SPAN to be more than C-SPAN. So those are the ideas out there. And the thing is that democracy is a great thing, but we've got to get on top of this whole notion of returning truth, and it's truth and its dignity. And we don't talk a lot about dignity, but it's such an essential thing people need to feel to be effective humans. They need to feel like they have dignity, that they matter, that they count and that they are respected, and everyone's entitled to dignity. So democracy gives us that opportunity. It creates unintended consequences, of course, with the First Amendment. It's a high value for us, but we've got to figure out a way to require broader reform around free speech, news, and the truth. And I'm going to leave you with that because I don't have the answer, but I know it's something that's really, really important. And it's one of the things that's got us into the mess we're in today. Have a good day. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.